And let's start with a bit of a thought exercise, as this is something that I think a lot of people view differently, and that's this. It's a very baseline question. Heading into Florida this weekend, how much pressure is on Brian Kelly? Now, some people, a lot of people, think that this is a moot point, that this conversation has no real substance to it because he's not under any pressure. He has a 10-year contract where the $100 million, he is going nowhere. That is objectively true. There is no concern over job security or anything like that. In fact, I think for a lot of people, almost any bad performance this year still doesn't even shake the long-term faith. I know I've talked about that, right? I still believe in the cult of Kelly. And the thing about being a cultist is you can present them with information that would show them that they are wrong, and they're just going to ignore it and keep believing. And so long-term, I believe in everything that Brian Kelly's trying to build here at LSU. But to sit here and act in a public job like this, where results matter so much, where remember, we have sociological studies here in Louisiana that have shown that judges sentence defendants harder after LSU losses than they do LSU wins. You cannot sit here and tell me that pressure is only dependent on job status. Okay? That's just simply not true. So is Brian Kelly at risk of being fired? Absolutely not. Is Brian Kelly under a lot of pressure this weekend? Abso-freaking-lutely. Like, are you kidding me? Who was the one name that was bandied about and became almost a civil war within the LSU fan base? It was Billy Napier. And you didn't even grant him an interview, right? He was the hottest candidate on the market. There were half LSU fans that thought that you were just above it and you should never talk to a coach from UL. And then the other half said, yeah, no, look, man, you have a chance to catch that riser. You have a chance to catch the next big thing. Go for it. Now, look, to be clear, if I'm hiring, I would, I would want to go the route that Scott Woodward did. You want to hire the more sure thing, the better resume, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, because Napier is a bit of an unknown, you could argue that maybe the ceiling is higher, maybe he's a bit more exciting. And if you were just to do a midseason report card, I think if you look at the relationship between results and expectations, I think that Billy Napier would score higher on that report card than does Brian Kelly. And so just in terms of confidence, in terms of happiness level, right? Fan satisfaction. If you go out here this weekend in year number one, and let's be clear, y'all are both approaching year one from a full rebuild standpoint. Okay. So it's a pretty fair matchup in terms of the quality of the two teams and the circumstances in which the coaches were asked to build these teams and get them ready for this year. If you lose that year one matchup, well, all of a sudden then you're going to see division begin to reemerge amongst the LSU fan base. All the people who supported, will suddenly be yelling about, why are we not holding Brian Kelly to the same standard, et cetera, et cetera. And look, there's plenty of logical counter arguments about, it's year number one, all this, but that will not stop it from cropping up. You have the people who wanted Napier and said, Kelly was old and tired, hire from the beginning. I told you we should have hired Napier. And, well, they will just get louder and louder. And then you'll have the people that argue against all that and cling on to the notion that this year doesn't matter and that Kelly's going to work out in the long term. And I think that's probably where I fall. But the potential to make all the message boards, all this fan base to kind of splinter it, make it real nasty over the next few weeks, it's all on the line going into Florida. And look, while nobody's jobs are on the line right now, there are some trends that are developing that you would like to see reversed. I mean, one trend that never really stopped developing is just special teams being awful. I think I tweeted during the game, defense remains stellar, offense remains average, and the special teams remain a ballast around the LSU neck that will drag them to the depths of hell. I stand by that, right? So special teams, Brian Polian must get better. Even more than that, though, I'm looking at this offense. This is an offense that I did a lot of mental gymnastics for right? Trying to find, okay, how did they have so much success against Mississippi State? Is it replicable? What's the plan going forward? And I believed that it was. But we'll talk to Matt Flynn about this more in hour number 2 as he dove into the film as well. But as you start to look closer at this situation, it's hard not to start to lose faith in this offense. I mean, Tennessee's defense was their weakness. You were completely unprepared to take advantage of their weakness. As we said, I feel like you're running a scheme that is a bit more pro style, a bit more old school, a bit more talent dependent on a team that may not have the talent. You have utterly failed to take advantage of or get any production out of by far the best position group on your entire team in the wide receiver group. And if you want to talk about how to judge a coach, that is kind of the bottom line judge, right? Are you elevating your players or are you dragging them down? And unfortunately, right now, offensively, I don't think you can make an objective argument to say that you are getting the most out of these players. And it's not to say, look, man, if you were a coach listening to this or somebody who has been in the game, do not mistake me. I get all the explanatory factors, okay? You have Will Campbell go down in a freak way right before the game last week. Garrett Dallinger goes down with an MCL sprain. That's a lot to overcome on an already thin offensive line, and you felt those absences. I understand the 39 scholarship players. I understand all of these things. But when it comes to the things that we are talking about, public confidence, public belief, that nuance doesn't matter. That context doesn't matter. The bottom line is you were paid $100 million. Make it work. Make it work. And again, even if you do want to engage with nuance and context, you still should be getting more out of these players, and you should be getting more out of this offense specifically. And once again, when you look at this Florida Gator team, what are they bad at? They are bad at the defensive side of the ball. 12th in the SEC in both points per game allowed and yards per game allowed. And yet, for the second week in a row, it feels like you can't have a ton of faith that they will be able to take advantage of that defense. So, you can tell me that there's no pressure on Brian Kelly entering this weekend, but I will completely disagree. Because if you go and you lose this game, then as I said, the conversation turns really negative. Every single press conference and interview that the players does, they're just having to sit there and answer negative questions, and this thing has the potential to maybe snowball out of control. So we're going to learn about the leadership. They had another players-only meeting 2 weeks in a row. Bit of a red flag, but here's to hoping that something comes out of them, the boys can get it back together. So, look, if you want to let me know what you think, any counter arguments, I'm very open to them. So, look, a lot of y'all are getting mad at me and saying that I'm stirring up drama, and that Brian Kelly's fine. You got to be patient. You got to have faith, and I don't look. I agree. But it sucks to get the doors blown off of you by Tennessee at home and these things. And look, if you want to argue for staying positive and staying the course, there is plenty of precedent. Look at Kirby Smart's year one, which was not good. Look at Nick Saban's year one, which was not good. When you take over a program, it's like Brian Kelly tells you in the press conference every day, right? This is the process. We are in the middle of the process. And so, yes, I do have long-term faith, but I also do want some short-term success, and you're not crazy to expect that. And you don't have to explain that away. Like, here's the deal with Florida. Florida is not better than you. Tennessee was flat out better than you. You cannot say the same thing about this year's Florida Gators. Now, look, I love their offensive line. They run the ball very damn well. And I think Anthony Richardson remains a physical freak, but he remains a work in progress as well. Like, he's not great at throwing the ball. So, no, Florida is not better than you. And so here's the deal. Losing to Tennessee, that is what it is. It's Hendon Hooker. It's a Tennessee team, which, by the way, Heupel 7-6 in year one, and now look at them. But Heupel and Hooker and that defense that continues to grow in confidence. Like I told you a few weeks ago, I think that Tennessee team is a top 4 team in the entire country. I don't think they'll make the playoff. We'll see after this weekend. Cannot wait for this weekend. But I think they're a top 4 team in the country. No shame in losing that team. But if you lose to Florida, and let's say if you lose badly, right? If you lose in a close battle, I'd say that's pretty much acceptable. But if you go there and you look bad against a bad defense and you can't get anything going and you have more special teams mistakes and these same issues are cropping up again, like I said last week, I felt like that was the first game in which I felt real regression, which is the most disappointing part about it. How are you going to tell someone not to be upset? Because if you lose to Florida badly, you got out-coached. Like there's just no other way around it. And in fact, Brian Kelly has told you multiple times this season that they have got out-coached. And I like that sort of honesty. But at the same time, fix it. You got to start doing the out-coaching, right? Like you did against Mississippi State, which was a masterclass in that. So there have been highs and lows. But again, this Florida LSU game are two teams in very similar spots, very similar talent levels. And this is so if you lose this game, you got out-coached, and you do not want to get out-coached by Billy Napier, the guy that you ignored in favor of the guy that you committed to for 10 years. I'm sorry, you just don't want that. Okay? And that is, again, not a commentary on anything long-term. But you just can't throw any short-term criticism out of the window just because I don't know exactly why you would be so hesitant to engage in short-term criticism. It is what it is. Football's a meritocracy. It's a results-based business. What are you seeing on the field? Break it down. And that's what we've done this year. And again, outside of the Mississippi State game, it's been really bad against Power 5 teams. You were awful against Florida State. Incredible quarter. But it's like the Falcons-Saints game. Nobody's looking back on that game fondly. You're just happy that the Saints managed to luck out with a win. LSU did not. So you was awful against Florida State, awful against Auburn, and awful against Tennessee. So you're 1 of 4 in your Power 5 games. Be better. That's all I'm saying. And I don't think that's a crazy demand, especially, again, not going into a Florida situation where they are a lot like you. They, too, have a very good win in Utah, which is actually not even appreciated as much as the Mississippi State win has. The Mississippi State win continues to gain in value. Utah getting knocked after UCLA last week may get knocked down a bit again this week. And then they also have their kind of Tennessee loss in how they got handled by Kentucky at home in the Swamp. Now, if you look at common opponents, Florida did perform better against Tennessee. They were obviously more able to take advantage of that Tennessee defense. They lost 38-33 in Knoxville. But at the same time, I don't think that the Tennessee team that they played is necessarily this Tennessee team. This Tennessee team is gaining in confidence, and it's gained to a point where now, if Bryce Young doesn't play, I would absolutely choose Tennessee to win, and I'm not sure that I won't choose them to win if Bryce Young does play. So I'm not even going to get too married to, Florida played Tennessee better than you did, like law of transitive sports properties. I don't care. But to act like there should be no criticism, no critiquing, just full support, nobody's calling for jobs or anything, but it's okay to demand the offense to be more creative. It's okay to demand the quarterback to make decisions quicker. It's okay to demand the coaches do your job and figure out a way to get the ball to the wide receivers. I don't care how you have to do it. It is your best position group on the team. It is critical in today's day and age for recruiting going forward that you show that you have an offensive system that can reward playmakers. That's how you got all of these wide receivers in the first place, were the offensive successes of 19 and 20, and you don't want to take steps back in that regard. Again, you don't want to regress.